right, everybody. We are back with another REMP Careers Daily Update. Today, I am joined with Manoj, my co-founder. Manoj, how you doing?
Doing well, Danny. How are you?
I'm good. It's hump day. We're almost through the middle of the week, so getting excited for the cruise into the weekend.
Same here. I'm going to go get a bike ride in for our chat right now.
Today, we want to talk about something that has always been important, and folks are just starting to realize it in the sales world, or at least starting to write about it and create content around it, and that is being empathetic through the sales process. This is something that I've seen a big shift in my career in sales. Back in 2010, there was a lot of kind of hunger, brashness, and also this hustle at all costs, call as many prospects at all costs attitude. And I think that's shifted for the better to a more empathetic approach. We want to break it down into why it's important, and then how to specifically use empathy within the sales arena on your sales calls. So let's start with why it's important. Empathy is important in the sales call for a few reasons. One, it improves your ability to uncover the hidden part of sales, what's actually not being said. And two, it creates a judgment-free zone where your prospect doesn't feel threatened in any way by the sales approach or the sales process. It allows you to really get to know your customer and allows your sales process to be really customer centric. So all of that was fluffy, right? And empathy is somewhat of a fluffy topic. So let's dive into some tactics on how to specifically apply it. Manoj, I know you had some thoughts here. What are some of the tactics for you to use empathy in your actual sales discussion?
There's, to your point, Danny, there's so much discussion these days on being empathetic during the sales process and being empathetic, in general with life. We're living in fairly interesting times. There's a global pandemic. And I'll tell you what empathy is not, including something in your email along the lines of, I hope you and your family is doing well during these uncertain times. I read a lot of that, and it's a nice thing to say, but that's not empathy. That's just you trying to be civil, right? And there's a big distinction between it. It takes a while, right? Some people are naturally empathetic, but I do think that it's a muscle that you can develop. And it takes work. It's not easy if it doesn't come to you naturally. There's kind of two buckets, right? Where specifically when you talk about the sales process, there are things that you can do even before you jump on a call, or even before you send any kind of correspondence to your customer, whether it's an email, whether it's a LinkedIn message. There's things that you can do in order to develop your empathy muscle or build empathy. And then there's things that you do during your call or during your communication. I'll talk about you probably should be doing before you jump on a call or before you send an email to your customers. At a very basic level, right, developing empathy to some extent involves having some exposure to other people's experiences. It's okay if you don't, but if you do, it makes life a lot easier because you're not just saying it, right? You feel it a little bit. And so put yourself in the shoes of your customer, and to the best you can, try and learn about what their daily life looks like. And you can do that by speaking to your existing customers. You can do that by having friendly conversations with friends in the industry that you're trying to serve. I would strongly encourage anyone to kind of go out and do it and not just stick with getting some materials from your product marketing team internally or reading some scripts that your VP of sales gives you. It doesn't really help you bridge that gap because you're just going to spit out buzzwords. You're not really going to know, well, crap, what is it that this person that I'm trying to sell to actually does on a daily basis? And so it takes you a week. It's okay. It's time really well worth and time really well spent. And so I would get to have a pulse of what does their daily life look like? What are the things that are doing from a very tactical perspective that is painful, that's redundant, that is time consuming. And that way you'll have a sense of why your product or your service can come in and solve that pain point. And it'll also make you so much more confident in your communication, your correspondence, because you've spent some time actually seeing what it is that they do, right? And so to the extent possible, before even you get on a call, learn as much as you can, either through conversations or try to repeat those tasks yourself. See how far you can get by doing a little bit of what they do. It's not going to be all of it, but some of it, right? So I think that before you jump on a call, that's absolutely necessary. The second thing, which is a little more of a mental thing, is treat it like a blank slate. Now that you are equipped with all of this knowledge, and now that you know what it feels like to walk in the shoes of your customer, before you type out an email or call somebody, wipe everything that you know and go in without having too many assumptions, because you never know. You may be challenged, you may learn something new. Keep that in the back of your mind, but don't go in all cocky that, I know exactly how you feel, right? Because you may not. And And so it's good to have a baseline knowledge, but before you jump onto the actual prospecting stage, I would just wipe everything clean and go in with a completely open mind. Passing it back on to you, Danny, what are some things that you can do during that process of email correspondence or cold calling or demoing, whatever it is, to demonstrate that you have some empathetic quality?
Yes, so Manoj, you brought up some really great points there, and that's a good foundational framework for our folks to start thinking about how to actually be empathetic before they approach the call. When they're on the call, there are some specific tactics you can do to force yourself into an empathetic mode. One would be when before you start the call, jot down that the goal of the call, or one of the primary goals of the call, is to seek an understanding of the customer's actual pain points. This will at least get your mind thinking, I need to be empathetic on that call. The second would be actively listening. So what does that mean? When the customer is speaking, you are doing nothing but listening to them. You are jotting notes when you can, but not in a way that's rude whatsoever, about how they're feeling, what they're thinking, the pains they may be feeling, and you are repeating those back and really trying to put yourself into their shoes during the call. And then the third thing is you must focus on the customer outcomes. What outcomes do they want? What outcomes would be wins for them? And you have to show the path to get to those outcomes using what you're selling. Now, this is very difficult. It's not an easy thing to do, because if their outcomes don't align with what your product does, that's where the sales art has to come in. But you really have to uncover those at the beginning. You can do that by asking questions like, what are you feeling right now about this part of the product, about the conversation, etc. You could ask questions like, how are you experiencing the product right now? Allow your prospect to have the space to think and respond. And then your job is to listen and take note accordingly. So I think that gives a good overview of the foundational elements and the specific tactics on how to be an empathetic salesperson. I think generally speaking, what you have to do is just remind yourself before any interaction that there's a human on the other side of the phone. They have thoughts, they have feelings, they have emotions just like you. Whatever reminders you need to set for yourself, whether that's a pop-up, whether that's in your CRM, whether that's in your note-taking applications, just remind yourself to be empathetic on your sales calls. Manoj, I think this was a great discussion.
I agree, Danny. If there's anything that folks can pick up from this chat, it's that there's a big difference from being civil and being polite and being empathetic. And it's not the same thing. So, don't pat yourself on the back if you write a kind note by email. This is hard and it doesn't happen overnight, but we can get, and this is something that I know that you and I continue to get better at over time. I certainly have a long way to go, but it's a place to start. So on that note, we'll do this again tomorrow.
Yep, awesome. Great to speak with you again. And for Manoj and Danny, it's another Ramp Careers Daily Update. Thanks, everybody.